again because the rain put paid to any hopes of that happening. As one of our young fans points to a Ducati bike which Pecco Bagnaia, not that particular model, but Pecco Bagnaia hasn't particularly enjoyed riding recently as he gives his wave of support to that particular fan who has come to see his hero win, which he has in 2 of his last 3 visits here.
How's the model Bagnaia machine got a bit more stability than the real thing? Out on circuit, we saw so many issues in Mandalika and Philippine and lately, didn't we? Certainly not lacking support though here, is he? On the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur, plenty of Pecco Bagnaia fans. A message from his wife, of course, Domitia Castagnini: to rise again, you first must know how to suffer. I think it's fair to say the 63 has been suffering quite a lot throughout 2025. Cast in a supporting role in the factory Ducati garage for so much of this year by Marc Marquez, who of course sadly is missing now for the remainder of the 2025 World Championship campaign. Return here for pre-season testing in February. All front and centre is she, Domitia, always in the background though, supporting her man, and always a constant companion at Bagnaia's side. He has needed that support network to keep a smile on his face after some really difficult Grand Prix of late. Mandalika was a horror show 7 days after what was a brilliant performance from Pecco in Motegi. And this, unfortunately, the latest in a series of setbacks. This is when Pecco had clawed his way back into the top 10 in Philippine last weekend, before it was a very familiar story. As soon as that rear tyre kicked back in line, it chucked a load of weight over the front end of that GP25 and sent him careering into the gravel trap at Siberia. Back-to-back DNFs now for Bagnaia for the first time. Sunday Grand Prix in 3.5 years.
Yeah, I guess the good news, if you're looking for it, you do have to look hard from a Pecco Bagnaia point of view in Australia. I mean, at least he was somewhat competitive in the race in Australia, of course, having to come from a long way down the field. He'd already qualified poorly and had a 3-place grid penalty added onto that after he got in this man's way. Marco Bezzecchi in qualifying, they stiffened the bike up at Ducati, which certainly cured some of his instability issues, but did make the bike very, very heavy to ride in the race itself, and Bagnaia dropping out with around 4 laps still to go.
Fastest on Friday in Japan, fastest on Friday in Mandalika, and fastest on Friday in Australia. There's Lightyear. Is it going to be light years ahead of the opposition once again here on Friday afternoon? That is a brilliant, brilliant slogan, isn't it? For some of the Malaysian fans. I like that a lot. There's Lightyear. A chapeau. That is superb work. I'm doffing my cap in the compliments here. Loving the work of those fans. Yeah, as we mentioned, can Bezzecchi then lock out every single Friday on our overseas tour as we get set for action, engines fire into life. Plenty of riders might be keen to get on with business here in the 16th session. With the threat of rain looming on the horizon, we might see just a few banker early time attacks lodged here. Last time I checked my weather radars on my weather app, which I have to say has a tendency to be rather unreliable throughout 2025. The next time we're expecting rain in this part of Malaysia was around 5 PM local time. So despite the delay after the all was dropped in the earlier 8 Talent Cup practice session, we might actually just about get away with it. Fingers crossed here in the coffee box.
Don't play games with the weather in this part of the world, because when it does rain, it comes down by the ocean hole. So get your lap time on the board early. We'll see what kind of tyres everyone is out there on, in terms of what compounds they're running. Everyone who's on the pit lane so far has got the soft front and rear, for very little opportunity earlier on this morning to understand much at all about the tyre options that Michelin has brought here this weekend. But we saw at the end of the practice session earlier on today in Prix practice, when it does rain to the kind of quantity we saw earlier on today, the track is essentially too dry to do any kind of running.
A new experience for Raul Fernandez, coming to a MotoGP race now as a Premier Class winner, although the form book does not suggest that he might be backing that Phillip Island success up here this weekend in Malaysia. Sadly, the 25-year-old recently turned at 25, the number 25, has not scored a single point in the last 2 sprints and last 2 Grand Prix here in Malaysia. Fabio Quartararo, well, he's popular wherever we go in the world, isn't he? He's El Diablo. A brilliant pole position, a breathtaking pole position in Phillip Island. He's delivered a few of them already so far in 2025 as Quartararo, but you have to say both the sprint and Grand Prix were very underwhelming, to say the least. a slump from pole position to 7th in the sprint for Quartararo. It was even worse in the main Grand Prix, 1st to 11th at the end of that 27-lap battle in Phillip Island. Not what Quartararo was expecting at all. So he couldn't stop the M1, couldn't carry any corner speed on the Wislar M1. We know Fabio is a bit of a training machine, he's a bit of a treadmill fanatic, isn't he? Just basically cancelled all the training programs, switched off, went to Singapore for a 3-day break after Australia, recharged the batteries. I think it's fair to say he's well and truly hit the reset button coming to Sepang.
He was 17 seconds behind at the checkered flag last time out. Some early issues or just a delay getting underway. Looks like the latter for Joan Mir in the factory Honda box, so we'll be seeing him join the action very shortly. But every single rider now, with Mir about to complete the grid, have gone out there, soft front, soft rear tyres. Runs of this 60-minute practice session. As always, top 10 at the end of it. They'll be booking their place through into qualifying 2.
Moto3 winner here in the past is Joan Mir. Recorded his 10th winner of that incredible 2017 campaign. His form has completely deserted him though in MotoGP. He has not scored a point here in Sepang since 2019. DNFs in the last 2 years. And a massively increased DNF tally in 2025 was added to, unfortunately, last time out in Phillip Island for Mir. So he got shot the big time with some ballooning front tyre temperature issues. And unfortunately, Australia is 12 DNF in the opening 19 Grand Prix. Across his HRC career now, Joan Mir, fingers and ears, if you're a fan of the 36, 43 DNFs at HRC is Pedro Acosta. Well, he made a very early mistake this morning in a dry FP1 session, and he has made the carbon copy move once again, not on the same corner, but it's very early on then that Acosta has dropped the ball on the factory KTM.
Wasn't exactly quick to get that up and running either. Another front end washout in a slow hairpin for Acosta, so that is 2 very slow front end crashes for Pedro Acosta in the space of 2 sessions. Fortunately, he is now back up and running.
Yeah, he's got that KTM RC16 back upright and heading back to the pits. Now, we just mentioned it with Aleix Espargaro's hot-footed it over from his European base in Andorra. Of course, doing so much sterling work behind the scenes to get the Honda RC213V completed once again. I'd like to say Aleix joined Jack down in pit lane. Good afternoon, guys.
Yeah, good afternoon to everybody from thankfully a dry pit lane for now. And as you say, Aleix, I think you only arrived in Malaysia this morning, am I right? So how's the jet lag managing to survive so far?
Yeah, this is my third visit in Malaysia in the last 3 weeks, and still a few more coming. So yeah, obviously we have a very busy testing program. I will test next week, so I decided just to come a bit earlier and stay with the guys in the garage, you know, to keep learning and to understand how is the weekend for them. So like this, I can test better, and obviously it's always good to hear from you in live from the factory riders.
As you say, you've done many laps here over the past month or so. I imagine that gives Honda a great opportunity this weekend. From the laps you've done on this updated RC213V, do you think the guys can be competitive?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hopefully they can be competitive as the last races. I mean, from Japan we saw very competitive both bikes on top always. We are missing some more podiums, but I think Joan and Luca are very strong. Especially Luca is always there in every session. So I think it's clear the progress that we have made. And yeah, this track I think looks quite good. The Honda during the test was good. They had a lot of info, so hopefully they can. Good for them, and they can do a good race.
From the start of the year, when we were last here in February to now, it feels like this bike has taken a huge leap forward. I mean, look at how competitive it is now compared to where they were at the start of the year. You must be really proud of all the work that everyone has been doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, a lot. I'm very proud. When I arrived here, I knew that this was a big brand, but it was a bit of chaos, you know. So from the beginning, we did a solid job. I have to say that this team is really competitive, more than what I expect. And Joan and Luca are very motivated. When you see that the results are coming and the bike is improving, also the riders, you know, they can push a little bit more. And I think it's clear, you know, the target is to win races. And at the beginning of the season, it looked like a dream, but now we can touch with the hands, can touch with the fingers. Hopefully next year it's going to be better.
Just finally, you mentioned you're going to be back here for another test before the end of the year. What else have you got planned up until the close of 2025?
In many things, there is a couple of setting items for both the riders that they want me to test, and also new part. 26 is around the corner. So basically we are starting already to test with the 26 bike. Promising. I have to say that the bike is very, very competitive, and hopefully we can see it.
Thanks, Blake. Great to see you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, always great to hear the thoughts of Malaysia Spargo, who has spent so much time in 2025 in Sepang. He might be eligible for Malaysian residency the way he's going at Older Age. Yeah, good to see him back then. He'll be back on circuit and on the RC213V next week, already working on the 2026 prototype. And they are long overdue a victory, aren't they? Honda, of course, have been victorious over the last couple of years. Alex Rins and Johan Zarco for LTO Honda. The factory Honda squad, though, has not won now in over 4 years, which is an incredible stat, isn't it? Marc Marquez, when he won the immediate Romagna Grand Prix in 2021, the last time we saw a factory Honda rider victorious in MotoGP. Maybe this weekend could be the time for Honda to strike back.
Signs aren't there that the good times are rolling back towards HRC once again, although evidence, yes, in Australia he can go. Still how much they've still got to go to truly be competitive with the very best in MotoGP in all conditions, despite just not quite turning as well around the fast corners of Phillip Island for Joan Mir and Luca Marini's liking. Well, I said months ago that we were able to know truly what to learn from this morning, but at the moment we do have the tape top 3 this afternoon. It's Aldeguer, Bagnaia and Mir. Your 1, 2, 3. We're already, understandably, a couple of seconds quicker than we were earlier on today. We were not inside the 2-minute mark earlier on today. We're now in the low 58 with Ferdinand Aldeguer. The lap record around here for Bagnaia in that incredible Q2 session when he went head-to-head with Roy Martin last year is a 56.3.
Fernandez putting in some more crucial development miles on what will be the new V4 powered Weissstein 1 in 2026. Is this the early journey, the start of Yamaha? Hopefully they will believe keeping Fabio Quartararo with the Iwata factory beyond next season, because Quartararo camp are already making noise of some discontent about the lack of tangible progress throughout 2025. You do feel that in terms of the battle between the two Japanese factories, it has been Honda that have got the jump on Yamaha over the majority of 2025. Wow, what a shot that is. The side-on shot coming out the final corner. That gives you such an incredible insight into the ride-height devices, picking up the acceleration grip out of that final corner. Incredible that, wasn't it? To see how low that V4 engine was. Well, the V4 powered M1 was sitting on that rear tyre. How's Augusto getting on at the moment? At 2:00.779. He's picked up 2.2 seconds. Of course, one rider's been doing so much work on the V4 behind the scenes as well as Andrea Dovizioso, who was part of that race 10 years ago, back in 2015. He wasn't actually too far behind that battle between 93 and 46. Although when he was asked about it, a special documentary has been released this week, Sepang Cloud, which you can catch across all of our social media channels. I think he took the fifth amendment, didn't he, Dobby? He was like, I'm not getting involved. I'm not playing the old blame game. I'm happy just to stick this one out. I'll stick on the fence, thank you very much.
I guess we'll never really truly settle on that particular incident in MotoGP history, which forever will be part of MotoGP folklore, for better or for worse. You know, many MotoGP what it is. A shame that Marc Marquez isn't here this weekend, not because of the anniversary, of course, of what happened in 2015, but because we're missing the world champion doing world champion things. If you didn't see the news overnight last night back in Europe, or late yesterday evening here in Malaysia, Marc Marquez's 2025 season is over. Of course, after the lap 1 collision with Marco Bezzecchi and the damage to his shoulder in Indonesia, there was some faint hope that we might see Marc Marquez before 2025 was over. Those faint hopes were extinguished yesterday. We won't see Marc Marquez in Portimao or in Valencia, nor in the Grand Prix, nor in the test, with Nicola Bulega potentially lined up to take his place.
February the 3rd, 2026, the next time we'll see Marc Marquez turn a wheel in anger on a factory Ducati. Latest news from Ducati and from the 93 himself was Anton's medical team in Madrid has to have a further 4-week period of immobilisation on that right arm, and it's going to be another long and painstaking winter rehab as far as the 32-year-old Spaniard is concerned. Nobody knows, do they, more about the highs and lows of Grand Prix motorcycle racing than Marc. But wow, he'd have to have a heart of stone to not feel sorry for him 7 days after winning that elusive 9th world title, 7th in MotoGP, cleaned out through no fault of his own in that Mandalika battle, and now, as we mentioned, facing yet another long off-season recovery as Fabio Quartararo once again looking a little bit agitated, a little bit frustrated.
Yeah, testing in pre-season went very well for Yamaha here, and then they went to Buriram, and Fabio Quartararo realised that perhaps the Yamaha wasn't as strong and competitive as he thought at the end of a week's load of testing here, where they ran into shakedown, and then of course in 3 days of pre-season testing they ended up as the nearest challengers to Ducati at the end of that test. That of course has since changed. The Aprilia really stepping forward as the nearest challengers to the Bologna Bullets. And what is the leading Aprilia doing at the moment in this session? It's Marco Bezzecchi in 7th place on a 158.912. The only Aprilia up inside the top 10 at the moment. Said it earlier on this weekend in gear up, and said it earlier on this morning too. If Aprilia are competitive versus Ducati here, then we know their challenge is serious.
Well, one thing that Fabio Quartararo and co at Yamaha have been begging for, they've been pleading for this V4 to deliver, is a few ponies, a bit of horsepower. Now we know in the early part of this development process, it hasn't exactly been a massive step forward in that department. Just having a look at the speed charts here, as the Somkiat Chantra goes into the gravel trap at turn 15. Augusto Fernandez on the V4 M1 is actually the slowest bike through the speed traps. Just for reference, he's 10 k's down on what we know is a rocket ship KTM, which at the moment is leading the way in the hands of Bastianini. 336.4 kilometres the KTM has blitzed the speed gun. Augusto Fernandez over 10 k's down that V4 Yamaha, 326.2 kilometres an hour. Now Yamaha promised, as this development process continues, it's very much an ongoing process, that they will be able to add more horsepower to that V4, and based on the evidence we saw in Misano and so far here in Sepang, they're going to need it.
Yeah, and it would appear as well that they're perhaps not running the current iteration, the current engine at its maximum capability either, for reliability purposes. You might recall back in Misano, one of those V4s did expire on Augusto Fernandez's bike. He had some mechanical issues through the weekend, in addition to a crash or two as well, whilst testing that motorcycle. It's a very different challenge, very different program, running the motorcycle in competitive race conditions. When you have the benefit of testing, you can do exactly what you want. You're not focused on the actual track sessions. Of course, you've got more track time available to you over a course of a full day, rather than perhaps 2 45 or a 45 and a 60-minute session as we have on a Friday in MotoGP. So it's a very different challenge that you're faced with from within the box, in terms of the changes you make to the bike, in terms of the general program for a session, from a competitive session, than you would have on a race weekend. So certainly more to come from that V4, but they need to put it through its paces in these kind of scenarios, around these kind of circuits, to truly understand what that bike is capable of.
I still want to see 10 k's down through the speed charts on what is a brand new concept motorcycle designed for one key reason, to have a whole more top speed and horsepower. Yellow flags out in sector 4. We'll go down to Jack very shortly. We'll try and find out who is off circuit in that final corner at turn 50. It's obviously to run off. The yellow flags have quickly cleared, as you can see on the graphic. Jack and Fabio Quartararo update, because he didn't look too happy with life when he came back into the garage.
Yeah, and that's putting it kindly as well. An incredibly exasperated Fabio Quartararo in the back of the box was for a solid 2 minutes just talking through the track map and describing every single problem he's having. He was not happy in any way whatsoever. He took his headphones off, threw them off to the right hand side, and rider coach Julian Simon had to come in and almost calm him down to say, look, there's still 45 minutes of this section remaining, all is not lost just yet. But you can just tell there's real tension, real frustration with Quartararo. Any opportunity when he comes to speak to us lately, and he's piling the pressure on Yamaha to say, you have to come up with a solid motorcycle for me in November at the Valencia test, when we're back here in February. Otherwise, I'm going to explore other avenues. It feels as though Yamaha are fighting a losing battle to try and keep Quartararo on side at the moment, even despite their efforts with this new V4.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jack, for those observations outside the factory Yamaha garage. There's an enormous amount of pressure on those Iwata engineers, led of course now by Max Bartolini, poached from the factory Ducati squad for so long, right-hand man to Gigi Dall'Igna in the Borgo Panigale factory garage. Yeah, there's pressure building day by day as Quartararo's frustrations come to the surface once again. They don't have much time, do they, to convince Fabio Quartararo. There'll be a lot of teams and riders looking to get some business done early in 2020. 2026 as we look towards the new 850cc engine capacity era and the new product tyre era in 2027. Well, Yamaha have got to crack on with this new V4. They have to show something very early, well, the latter part of 2025 and early in 2026 if they're going to do anything to convince Quartararo to stay, because he's made no bones about it. He's going to be having to clear off and find another opportunity if that's required.
Plenty of tests is 25 days away. You feel that that is a crucial day. And Fabio Quartararo will want signs of tangible progress on board that inline 4 M1. Of course, he'll jump across to the V4 as Joan Mir is hop, skipping and jumping his way into turn number 1. Mir currently the nearest challenger to your pace setter, Fermin Aldeguer.
That's how you save the rear tyre in Sepang. That's not how you're supposed to stop a MotoGP bike, Joan. Ideally, you want the rear tyre helping you stop with the front tyre as well as you break into that first corner. Yeah, HRC, Mir's crew, having a bit of a smile as they look up at the big screens inside the Honda garage. We saw Joan Mir, didn't we, wrestling that RC213V around that sensational podium in Montaigne a few weeks ago. He really does wring the neck of that Honda. As Pedro, of course, to them, back out on circuit after his early tip-off at turn 9. We are as yet to see a lap time registered by the Spaniard. Of course, 23 riders on circuit here this weekend with the addition of Augusto Fernandez on the V4 Yamaha. We are sadly missing Maverick Vinales, Hoy Martin and Marc Marquez, but as was the case in qualifying last time out, they are all replaced by Makeki Piro at Ducati, Lorenzo Savadori at Aprilia, and Paul Espargaro doing such a brilliant job once again standing in for Maverick Vinales. Paul Espargaro once again sticking his nose in that fight for the top 10. How does he keep doing it? Part-time racer in the Paul Espargaro, the fastest TV pundit in the world, and once again inside that top 10 super.
Once we saw the engine play last Friday in for the pilot, Paul Espargaro the lead in KTM. Of course, that could still change as we go through the afternoon. And Savadori too, of course, the very busy test rider, perhaps with as much time racing this year as testing, of course, with the various injuries that Jorge Martin has had. Savadori hasn't escaped the injury curse either. Of course, he had that big crash, the front end stopping that he performed, he was trying to avoid Brad Binder in qualifying 1 last weekend. And let's say that Savadori was racing in quite a bit of pain on the Sunday afternoon in Phillip Island. Did eventually get himself to the checkered flag in 16th place, but in quite a bit of pain while doing so.
Prix have never had a top 6 in a Malaysian Grand Prix previously. You feel that record's most likely to change here this weekend, particularly if Marco Bezzecchi has anything to say about it, and likewise Raul Fernandez, the Australian Grand Prix winner. Well, 2 riders at the moment, well 3 riders really, are catching the eye, aren't we? It's the same top 3 from this morning in a slightly different order. Fermin Aldeguer, though, who really is cashing in on the 6 days of testing he had here pre-season. Of course, he was eligible for the rookies test and then took part in the full 3-day official test here in Sepang. So of all the circuits he's come to in his rookie campaign, in terms of experience on a MotoGP bike, well, Aldeguer blessed with the most coming into this Sepang weekend. He is capitalising at 58.279, still sees him lead the way. Joan Mir, 3rd this morning, 2nd so far this afternoon on the factory Honda. Mateka Banyai once again inside the top 3. Well, Jack's been keeping a close eye on a frustrated Fabio Quartararo outside the factory Yamaha garage. Let's get some thoughts from deep inside the heart of the Iwata garage. And I'm going to say Massimo Marigatti joins Jack now down in pit lane.
Yeah, as you say, crucial period for Yamaha. The Valencia test only 25 days away now. The V4 once again on track. Mayo, this period before the end of the season, how important is it for the future of Yamaha, do you feel?
Yes, series is just like another period. We are working by August to improve both bikes. And for sure now the track condition are not helping us. You know, when there is lots of grip for us, all the riders are complaining the same problem. Because of the bike, we have 2 ways. There will be more rubber.
When you hear Fabio speaking ahead of the weekend saying I need a bike next year that I can be in the top 5 in every session. I need to make my decision with regards to my future at the start of the season. What does that do to the atmosphere within the box?
The box has nothing changed. We are just doing our job, and we are really committed to try to find to be where we would like to be. And I think we are proving the commitment that we have. In the end, competitive bike to try to get information about the new regulation. We are just committed. It's difficult to say now where we are, what will be in Jumat. We are just following the plan, and for sure we are not clear about the job that we have in front of us.
When we spoke to in Misano, when the V4 debuted, he said that the idea was to wildcard here and then again in Valencia. Is that still the plan for Augusto?
Yeah. We had to. This race at the beginning was not in our plan, but we really wanted to do a wild card in a really hot condition. And the next will be Valencia.
As I mentioned, 25 days before the Valencia test. I know that Yamaha are likely going to wait for a big PR to say we're going to run the V4 next year, but surely 25 days from now we're going to see the V4 in the hands of Fabio and Alex. That looks like it's the direction for you guys.
Valencia, all our riders will have one qualifier.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to a factory Yamaha bus by Meregali. Sort of trying to calm the waters. No rear grip out on circuit. He said every rider is chasing their tail in that department. It's a fair point actually by Meregali. We're a long way off the all-time lap record. 2 seconds pretty much off that best pace. And these are conditions that are conducive to fast battery in Sepang with this heavy cloud cover. Probably about as cool as it's going to get in Malaysia. It was certainly cool here yesterday, the build up to this 20th round of 2025 as we pick up Bagnaia. It was there, wasn't it, last year in the X-Back with Roy Martin, where there was clutch contact between those two in that startling start to Sepang 2024. Bagnaia at the moment still in P3 with a 158.615.
Never tire of watching those first 4 or 5 laps of last year's Malaysian Grand Prix. Pecco Bagnaia did what he had to do, but of course, fortunately for him, the sprint crash the day before had done too much damage already for him to still retain his world title. Just 2 World Championships rather than 3 for Pecco Bagnaia in Moto2 Reference the cloud cover we have here, directly outside our common front window, looking out the back of the circuit. There is some heavy cloud cover, some black clouds that we did see come over the circuit earlier on this morning, and some that monsoon on our heads. Just hoping, looking at where the clouds are at the moment, off to the distance, and they might just pass around the back of the circuit. If they do hit the circuit, they're going to hit around turns 7 and 8.
Speed wobble there. Are there more stability issues for Bagnaia? He got on the gas from the factory. Ducati hammering out of turn 14, second gear through there, about 80 kilometers an hour, and dives into the pit lane does Pecco. Having a look at some well-worn soft front, soft rear rubber here, isn't it, for Michelin? Gigi Delinia, like I'm sure so many of us in and out of the paddock have been just wondering what on earth has been going on with Bagnaia, particularly on this flyway sequence. Misano was a bit of a ballet for him before he headed on the overseas tour. Motegi, well, that was brilliant. Mandalika and Australia have been absolutely disastrous as far as the 63 is concerned. Clocks back down into the seats alongside Christian Gavarini and Gigi Delinia, and starts yet another debrief. With that threatening cloud come off the distance, you do wonder whether very shortly, as we come to the halfway point of this session, we might get some early time attacks coming in. There's the wobble, there is the big speed wobble. Of course, we saw it very dramatically and very publicly for Bagnaia and Ducati in the warm up session pre-Grand Prix in Australia last weekend. Now this is something that he has been talking constantly about over the last few weeks. I think actually Pecco in some respects would have been fairly happy that he had that moment, the big wobble down the straight in Phillip Pilot, because he was like, well, there you go. That's the crystal clear proof of what I've been talking about for so many weeks. So yeah, another big head shake, another big speed wobble, and he got on the gas out of 14.
Yeah, that was certainly an extreme version of it, what we saw in the Warm Up in Australia. They had tried a rather experimental setup which did not bring the desired results for Pecco Bagnaia on that particular occasion. In amongst some of the instability here, he's quick. Third quickest at the moment on a 1:58.6. Pedro Acosta looks to get his session finally up and running after a crash at turn 9 early on. Acosta just on the fringes in the top 10 now, just behind his fellow KTM colleague, Thomas Bargerat.
He's had a couple of very early crashes in both sessions, hasn't he, Acosta? Maybe just being a little bit too aggressive before the tyres have got up to an optimal working temperature. This is clearly an in-lap incoming for the 21-year-old. Happy memories, of course, of the Sepang International Circuit for Acosta. A couple of years ago in 2023, a second place saw him crown the youngest ever Moto2 World Champion. Fast forwarded 2 years later, we'd be anticipating or thinking of a scenario where Acosta was still to break his victory duck in MotoGP as more adjustments go on the front end of Bagnaia's factory Ducati. I'm not sure really if there's any parts, components or setups that Ducati haven't tried to find a solution to Bagnaia's front end woes.
And every time he comes back in the pit, we're focusing on it. So you must imagine how it must feel if you're Christian Gambarini, Gigi Dall'Igna or anyone in Pecco's side of the box when he sits down in his chair, you're hanging on his every word, just hoping that he said something positive about the Ducati that he's riding, the 2024 Aero spec on one of his factory Ducatis. And of course, it was only one of his factory Ducatis last weekend that really worked. One bike didn't behave, the other did.
See as well, look how many laps he put on that soft front tyre. That was a well award, particularly on the left hand side, wasn't it? You can see that he's getting a lot of information and a lot of data on a worn soft front, because that was some pretty excessive wear on the left hand side. Jack, back down to you.
Yeah, Bagnaia, we saw this morning, we spoke about the fact that he was doing those back-to-back testings between 25 and 24 stages. Looks as though he's gone back to 24 for this afternoon, but clearly hasn't solved all of the issues. Although, as you pointed out, Lewis, third in the standings. I mean, Davide Cardotti, I think, has referenced this throughout the year, that it comes to a point where the motorcycle isn't going to be perfect. It's down to you, Pecco, just to go out there and do the business. He's third on the standings, so it's not a terrible state of affairs.
Third moment, thanks Jack. Third for the 310 behind Fermin Aldeguer, who has been flying so far here on day one in Sepang. Looking to rebound from a pretty miserable Phillip Island experience for Aldeguer after the highs, the incredible highs of Mandalika, where he became our second youngest ever MotoGP winner, to a rather frustrating and underwhelming Australian Grand Prix. Certainly his cause was not helped by an errant Ducati GP24, which at times didn't even know where it was around Phillip Island. There was a fair few gremlins that seemed to have got in the electronic system for Aldeguer.
Wrapped up Joe Bagnaia, he is the Grand Prix, does show him the fact that it is the GP24 that Bagnaia won on last year that is ahead of it, right at the very top in case of Fermin Aldeguer. Agora, that's got a new soft rear tyre on, could be a good strategy this from Trackhouse. Agora into 10th place on a 1:59.109, even if that Aprilia did look something like a rodeo bull experience through turns 13 and 14.
Get the glory, that was the flags that were waving proudly in Buriram last year when Agora crowned the Moto2 World Championship in 2024 birthday. That was for the Japanese rider, first Japanese rider to win a Grand Prix title since 2009. Bagnaia then heading out for another shift on the factory Ducati, as it does look like off into the distance, particularly out of the back of sort of turns 4, 5, 6 and 7. There are still a lot of very dark trending clouds. Jack, have we got anything to worry about weather-wise?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, it has gone noticeably cooler. The wind has picked up. I can see that those grey clouds down towards turn 1, which is where all of the bad weather earlier today came from, are starting to grow larger and larger. We saw Bagnaia just go back out on track. That was on a very used soft rear tyre. So I am surprised we're not seeing more riders out there trying to get some banker lapping, because as we saw this morning, when it arrived, that's it, it's game over. So a lot of these guys outside the top 10, it could be worth just getting some banker lapping nice and early, probably 10 minutes ahead of schedule.
Thanks, Jack. Ogura is certainly, that's his strategy, that's his policy. Right now, once again, glancing at the weather radars. A lot of rain, it looks like, forecast for later on this evening in Sepang, which will certainly clear away a lot of the rubber that's been laid down in the afternoon sessions here in Sepang. We'll track houses Ogura as he drops anchor on the brakes into this tight multi-line entry, turn 15. He's going to cut a late apex here. Here's Ogura. Keeps a very close eye on the clouds. What's going on with the weather? Tell us what's happening a few miles further up the road.
Yeah, both of the Trackhouse and Prix were sent out a moment ago for a run, although we've not seen anything by way of improvement from Ralph Fernandez just yet. He's down in 14th place, a second off the pace. As some Pedro Costa fans tell us exactly who they want to succeed this weekend, and they want to see a 19th different MotoGP winner on our full-time grid here in 2025, because it will not be lost on Pedro Costa that he's one of 4 remaining on our full-time grid who are still without one.
Yeah, Andre Iannone, Red Bull Ring, Cal Crutchlow for no, and Maverick Vinales and Silverstone. The last time we had 3 different first-time winners in 3 successive Grand Prix. 9 long years ago now. No pressure, Pedro. I see he looks to follow Fermin Aldeguer and Ralph Fernandez, 2 fellow Spaniards who beat him to it. They beat him to the top step of the podium in MotoGP, which trusters will not sit well with the very ambitious and eager to get on with business Pedro Acosta in MotoGP. There's no way that he would have envisaged a scenario where he would have been coming to start number 39 in the Premier Class, still winless. Here is Ogura then, trying to cash in on that new soft rear tyre. Good lap actually, this being tried in by the Moto2 World Champion. Powers out of turn 11, through 12 he goes. You just drop down through this part of Sepang. Great corner is that left-hander of 12. Third gear there, 200 kilometers an hour when you tip it in. Through turn 14, second gear here now. Engage the rear ride-high device and hang on for dear life as you close up towards 300 kilometers an hour down this long back straight. Once again, another hard braking zone. Good overtaking opportunity this into the second gear, turn to 15. You drop down to around 65 kilometers an hour for that final corner on the circuit. Ogura maybe picking up maybe 1 or 2 places here late on. In fact, he does. Right on cue, 10th to 8th for Ogura, a 1:59.37.
Ogura now 8th ahead of Quartararo and Zarco, so the French pair at the bottom end of the top 10. Alex Rins, you can see here, is also going early on a brand new soft rear tyre as he safely negotiates turn number 9. Alex Rins on a fairly good run of form, it has to be said, with his best result last time out in Australia since he won the Grand Prix of the Americas in 2023. Although that Yamaha was snapping sideways as he tried to scrub the speed.
Maragall on the left-hand side of your picture there briefly. That's rain's falling. Rain is falling. Now this could be huge.
Guys.
This then could be absolutely massive in terms of few places. Alex Rins might be right to the death here if this rain starts getting heavier. If he was like this morning when it really did start to bucket down, well, this will be last chance to lose in terms of a Q2 spot. At the moment, Aldeguer, Mia, Bagnaia, Gian Antonio, Marini, Alex Marquez, Bettesecchi, Ogura. How crucial could Ogura's early time attack be? 8th ahead of Quartararo and Zarco. Rins over the line then, up to 5th place with a 1:58.691. How decisive could that be for the Spaniards?
I'm amazed more teams didn't do this. Surely they're all looking at the same weather radars that we are. Everyone's got the same availability down in pit lane, but it appears that only Trackhouse and the factory Yamaha team have been switched on to the potential danger here.
Yeah, a few teams are being caught cold here, aren't they? Now, it's not a given that this rain will get any worse, and there'll be a lot of teams and riders praying that it doesn't. Some riders now are doing a rain dance. Alex Rins won't care 1 iota if the heavens open. Will he, having just fighting that 58.691 has got him up into 5th place. Augusto Fernandez powers the V4 powered M1 up into 19th. He finally almost into the 1:59s as Fabio Quartararo heads out on circuit. He's in that danger zone in 10th place.
He cannot play any games here. We've got to get out there and get a lap time on the board. You can see they're making changes to the pretty event. Zeki's got a little bit of margin of safety, currently in 8th. If you're Femi Aldeguer, Juan Mir, Pekka Bagnaia and company, then just let it rain at this stage. You're more than safe at the top of the standings. The team are telling Pekka Bagnaia to come back in. One would assume that's because they want to get some soft rear tyres on it.
Well, Femi Aldeguer, just like in FP1 this morning, he won't care if the sky chucks down a lot of precipitation, because when it rained this morning he was fastest, and that's exactly the scenario right now. Jack, is this plane going to get any heavy, do you think?
Well, there's nothing falling in pit lane at the moment. It's clearly over on the back part of the circuit. I've been close to looking at the visors and the screens of riders when they're coming in pit lane. There's hardly any evidence, in fact I'd say no evidence of any rain on either visors or on the screen. So whatever is falling is incredibly light at the moment, but obviously it's in the area, it is coming, so these guys need to get out and get a lap sharpie.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. One who is making a big play. The Q2 is Zarco, brand new soft front, brand new soft rear. A 40 Frenchman, 35-year-old who has great memories, of course, of Sepang, winning one of his Moto2 titles here all the way back in the day, and that famous double backflip with his brother. Zarco needs this, that wall, that was unsettled. That's how hard Zarco is pushing really, really hard. Rear tyre in the air as he grabbed a handful of brake going into the turn 7 and 8 complex, back down through the gearbox, wearing out the bottom of that left boot as well on the LCR Honda into turn 9. Wow, Zarco is all in here, isn't he? This is some lap being produced by the Frenchman. Really quick, really rapid through the first half of this current lap. Zarco just outside of that top 10 in 11.
Quartararo is just on an out lap at the moment. He's coming towards the final corner, so he's about to start his time lap, and when he starts it, he could be outside the top 10. He almost certainly will be outside of the top 10. Zarco could potentially get himself up in the top 3 here, and we know from the mod that one person who's got access to the best weather radars in the business is Lucio Cecchinello.
Second place incoming here for Zarco, unless he makes a right hash of this final sector and this final corner. What a lap it has been to follow Zarco. Well, that Honda has looked anything but steady and stable underneath him. He is wringing the neck, isn't he, right now, at the RT213B. Is his second place for Zarco? Over the line he goes. It's better. It's even better. Well, he nailed the final sector. A 1:58.129. Crack a smile, Lucio. Come on, give us a smile. Johan Zarco has just put the LCR Honda into P1. Brilliant that lap by Zarco.
So Fabio Quartararo now needs to respond, and he is responding. Fastest first sector for the Frenchman, who is now down to 11th place, and it would then bump Agura back out. So Agura's strategy worked for the time being, but perhaps they went a minute or two too early down there at track out. Quartararo now into the heart of turn 7 and 8.
Marini, Morbidelli, Salvadori, Binder, Mia, Acosta, Espargaro, Di Antonio, Bagnaia, Bezzecchi and Agura, all still in the pits. We know Agura has already had one crack at a time attack, so a lot of those riders will be just waiting to venture out for their first attacks on soft tyres. Quartararo, when he's asking for a whole host of power on the follow coming out of turn 9 there, there's a big moment on the rear, wasn't there, for the Frenchman out of turn 9. We could very, very surely have a French 1-2 here in Sepang. Drops down through 12 and 13 through this longer radius, right-hander of 14. Now it's all about picking up the drive grip, getting on the fat part of the tyre and powering down this back straight. Quartararo then at the moment on course to be deposing Zarco. 1:58.129 is his compatriots benchmark right now as begs leads for the factory Yamaha to stop going into turn 15. Cuts that tight inside line, clips the inside curve out of 15. We go. Quartararo, surely it's a French 1-2 it is. Quartararo leads 1:58.113. He leads Zarco.
So Quartararo, Zarco, Aldier, Mia, your top four for Bagnaia now down to 5th. Rince's early flyer has now put in 7th. Well, it's a costly pit lane, and Alex Marquez has dropped his Ducati at turn 2. Alex Marquez had just started his first flying lap on a soft rear tyre. He didn't make it very far.
Alex will now not need rain. He's already right on the cusp in the back end of that top 10 in 9th place is Alex Marquez.
Right on the racing line there.
Yeah, he's got to be careful here. Turn 2, little front end wash out as he threw that Gresini Ducati onto his left hand side. We saw Acosta go down in similar fashion right at the beginning of FP1 this morning. Well, Alex has just tapped the power back in, hadn't he? Just as for the throttles there, was that crucial, just taking that little bit of weight off the front end. He's been able to get the 73 Ducati going once again, although it looks like something's dangling off the left side.
Hernandez could be while the iron's hot here. Alex Marquez 9th. He's going to come back up pit lane and jump on his number 2 bike and try again on that one. When he does that, he might be out of the top 10 here with Oliveira improving. He's up the road now into the final corner. This could be close to Bettini, who is currently in 10th place. Ben is on an outlap, so he's about to start his first time attack of the afternoon. What can Oliveira do on the Pramac Yamaha? Only up into 13th place.
2 crashes on day 1 for Acosta, 2 crashes on day 1 now for Alex Marquez, who's riding on board with qualifying winner Raul Fernandez. Big lap list feels like it's coming in from Fernandez. It is 16th to 5th. He jumps up 11 places on the standings, a 158.581 from Raul. So at the moment we've got once again one representative from Trackhouse MotoGP in Q2, not too far behind in 12th place is Agura. Not that short, shifting through the gearbox. As you drop down through the spectacular turn 3, you've got to be really managing the right hand side of that rear tyre over the full 20 laps here on Sunday. Hard braking then, bit of a rise up then into turn 4.
I recall Andrea Dovizioso, who's describing turn 3 here at Sepang as his favourite corner on the entire calendar. It requires plenty of commitment and management of the throttle there as you're in 4th gear at around about 175 kilometres an hour.
Well, Alex Marquez at the moment is really in a spot of bother here. He's in that danger zone because he's been pushed back down to 10, 2 crashes on day 1. Let's get a Gazrini Ducati update from Jack.
Yeah, they're getting the number 2 bike prepared, but it's a nightmare 60 seconds because Fermin Aldeguer came straight down pit lane at the end of his outlap as well, complaining to Frankie Carcetti of all kinds of instability on the front end of the bike, and as a result they're now pressing his number 2 machine as well.
Aldeguer getting a dose to the Bagnaia at the moment with an unstable front end on the Ducati GP24. Thanks once again as always, Jack. Good laps coming in here from Morbidelli and Juan Mir. We're tracking the Gian Antonio and the Spargaro over the line. Hollis Spargaro has pulled another rabbit out of the hat in the Vinales ECU replacement of 58.546 from Felicio. Morbidelli and Mir are creaming their current. That Bersecchi now up into P5. More rain is coming and Morbidelli, oh, he was really wide. Oh, really wide there, wasn't he? Going through that turn to 15. That really has mucked up Morbidelli's last lap. Surely over on 16th to 8. Oh, he lost 0.3 of a second and a little bit more, didn't he, there? Juan Mir. That's a little bit better, more cleaner through that final corner. Mir could be heading for P1 here. He's already in 4th place with a 158.408. Over the line, Mir goes. He does improve, but stays in P4.
But Rins and Marini, who've now been turfed out of the top 10. And this could be a crucial 30 seconds in Pedro Acosta's Friday afternoon. He needs this lap badly at the moment. He's not projected to go into the top 10. It would be Didier that dumps out if Acosta can get this final sector right as the rain starts to ever so slightly intensify. So are these the final seconds, final moments where a Q2 place can be rescued for Pedro Acosta, the 37, out of the final corner, turn 15, he's aiming at a 1:58.6, it's a 58.5 for Acosta, who moves into 6th.
Yeah, and his teammate is in a whole world of pain. Brad Binder is nowhere. Binder is 23rd and last, hasn't even done a 59 so far in this afternoon session. Brad Binder does not need any additional rain in this practice session in Malaysia. He's down in last place, 200.244. In behind a Yamaha wildcard Augusto Fernandez.
Seasonal spots of rain on Marquez's Graffiti Ducati. He has crashed at precisely the wrong moment in this session. He's now back to 14th place on a 58.8, and clearly his number 2 bike isn't immediately ready for him to jump back on. Bagnaia back up pit lane. He is just about safe at the moment in 10th, 38 thousandths ahead of Fabio Di Gianantonio.
Quattararo, having got in that early 158.113, still leads this session. It's a French 1-2 as it stands right now, ahead of Fermin Aldeguer. Jack, what's going on in what seems to be like ever-changing conditions down in pit lane?
Yeah, this light rain really starting to fall a lot heavier now, especially down the start-finish straight on the running towards turn 1. You might have seen a lot of guys losing time through that final sector, and that's because where the rain is at its heaviest. You've got to think with what, 14 minutes remaining of this one, either the wind picks up, which is pretty strong and it blows through. Otherwise, this is the end of it with no one on track because conditions are worsening by the second.
Yeah, we saw, thanks Jack, we saw him with a big mistake in that final sector by more influenced by some of those rain spots, or was it just Frankie absolutely on the ragged edge as she threatened P1 actually at that stage, did Morbidelli, but it's still Quartararo in the box seat, so 158.113 at the moment. Doesn't look like he's in any great hurry to get back out on circuit, does he? Fabio, as he conducts a debrief with Diego Gabellini, his crew chief.
Well, Alex Marquez might be forced back into a corner here to have to go out and take the risk. He did say, coming to this weekend, that he might take a few more risks. Second in the World Championship is nearly secured. Perhaps if he wins the sprint tomorrow afternoon, Alex Marquez will be assured of P2 in the World Championship. Well, he might have to ride in some very unfavourable conditions in just a moment in the 73 if he is to book a place in qualifying 2.
Sepang falls of silence. Every single rider now is back in pit lane. This could be the calm before the thunderstorm potentially here in Malaysia, as everybody, including myself and Lewis, are just glued with our eyes on the skies to see whether there is going to be any additional rain. Quartararo, Zarco, Aldeguer, Mir, Bezzecchi, Acosta, Spargaro, Fernandez, Morbidelli and Bagnaia in the top 10. And there is that rain. It is starting to fall heavier and heavier. As our top 10 already been decided, is it locked and loaded?
Well, Alex Marquez at the moment is standing there with the music having stopped and the 10 of the riders sat in chairs, and he's unfortunately not in one at the moment. Pecco Bagnaia, as you can see on your screens, is the rider at risk. He might just have dodged the mother of all bullets here this afternoon, Bagnaia, who I don't think was focusing on time attack. He was just doing his Friday afternoon homework. The rain has arrived just in the nick of time for the 63.
What do we think, Jack? Are we going to get any... Well, do you think, looking at current conditions in pit lane, that this might be game over?
The thing is, the rain is so light, it's like a light mist that's just sort of blowing across the start-finish straight, and with the track temperature being so red hot, I don't think it's going to be affecting grip levels, but it's the worst possible scenario for these riders. 10 minutes to go in a practice session, soft rear tyre on the back, rain on the visor, but they will be told by the team, look, at the track temp as it is, that rain is going to be evaporating as soon as it lands. You've got to go out and push. It truly is, as Jack Miller likes to say, disengage brain, close your eyes and just hope for the best.
Yeah, it feels like we could be coming up to Miller territory very, very soon. This is the reason why Alex Marquez is in the spot to bother as we head into the final 10 minutes of this practice session. Just heard Alex there just start to tap the power back in, and he tries to get out and get a good exit through turn 2 to pick up some corner speed down through 3. So Quartararo, Zarco, Aldeguer, Mir, Bezzecchi, Acosta, Espargaro, Fernandez, Raul, the version of Morbidelli and Bagnaia. I'm surprised they're not all doing rain dances right now inside their respective garages, because they will be booking places into Q2 if this rain does break from the rain. Are the likes of the Gian Antonio, Rins, Gian Antonio and Rins. It's not even 400s outside of Q2 at the moment. Less than 400s behind the Italian is Rins. Not even a 10th splitting Rins and Marini. Less than 300s then covers Marini and Alex Marquez. Bit of a gap then back to Ayagura. But the Gian Antonio, Rins, Marini and Marquez through the Q2, well, not directly through the Q2, but certainly in with a better shot than they stand right now.
In fairness to Rins and to Agura, they did go for it. They did get a run in before this rain started to loom over the circuit. They recognised the danger that was coming our way and got a lap on the board. At the time, of course, he did put them inside the top 10. That has since changed as some other teams wised up to Gian Antonio, Marini and Miguel Oliveira. He did go again. Alex Marquez was just in the process. He only made it halfway around turn 2 before he took the front. He's now brightening up outside our commentary box window. The hills in the background starting to be surrounded by some pretty heavy cloud cover. We could see them pretty clearly off into the distance around 10 minutes ago. Now we can barely see it.
Aldeguer, some start to that practice session it was from the 54. A 58.279 on his third lap of the session is at the moment what's got him inside Q2 in third place. We heard when he went out for his first time attack from Jack, he came straight back in on that fresh shot, probably reporting some stability issues with the front end of that GP24. So he'll be thanking his lucky stars at the moment that he was so fast straight out the gate in this session. That 158.279 has not been bettered as yet by Aldeguer. In fact, the only other rider inside the top 10 that hasn't clearly nailed a time attack as yet is Bagnaia. There's some rather tense, some anxious faces, nervy faces down in this Sepang pit lane at the moment. One of them being worn by the 73 of Alex. 7 this morning in FP1, a crash at turn 2 when he started his first time attack. Leaves Alex in a bit of a vulnerable 14th place at the moment.
They don't appear to be feeling the pressure down there completely, do they? All the strain of what's going on. Nadia Panavani over to the right-hand side there. Julie Marquez, father of Mark and Alex, also seems pretty chilled with what's going on. Yet it's really brightened up on the main straight now. It's almost as if they're all waiting for someone else to go out there and try and sample the conditions first, but it's those outside the top 10 who can't afford to wait around.
Amazingly, Gian Antonio leaving under a blaze of sunshine on the Pertamina Enduro VR46 racing bike. That might be where the sun is shining at its brightest, because down to the turns 5, 6, 7 and 8, and it's still very, very dark indeed. As we ride on board with Alex Marquez, as he looks towards the Kuala Lumpur International Airport, it's a pretty pleasant view, but when he goes through turns 1 and 2 and starts heading the opposite way, he'll be thinking, please God, don't rain.
The rainbow over to the distance now, out at turns 7 and 8. Well, the pot of gold at the end of it is a place in qualifying 2. At the moment, the 10 riders occupying those places: Quartararo, Zarco, Aldeguer, Mir, Bezzecchi, Acosta, Paul Espargaro, Raul Fernandez, Frankie Morbidelli and Pecco Bagnaia. No great surprise to see that Fabio Di Gianantonio was keen to get on with it. He's down in 11th place. Frankie Morbidelli there just snuck in the 9th fastest time before the rain started to fall, but he is far from safe.
Well, this outlap, 6.5 minutes of the section remaining. Probably going to get 2 flying laps, aren't you? And a crack at Q2. One rider that needs a big lap is Alex Marquez. A couple of years ago, of course, in Sepang, he was the sprint winner on an excellent weekend for Alex. He was second in the main Grand Prix as well. Of course, second place in 6 years ago in 2019. One of the best days of Alex's career when that secured him the PDS. Riders peel out of pit lane. Brad Binder certainly needs a big 5 minutes, 6 minutes or so. Still stuck down in through that tricky, tight, gnarly second corner. Already caught out Acosta and Alex on day 1 here in Malaysia.
Well, Binder knows how gnarly that second corner can be from the Grand Prix here last year when he was involved in that 3-rider collision with Fabio Quartararo and Jack Miller. Here is El Diablo, who's in fact got the lead to lose at the moment, given that he's up in P1 on a 158.113. The track temperature, as Jack mentioned, has enabled that rain just to evaporate away, but understandably, well, you wouldn't blame Alex Marquez if he displays a little bit of caution simply on this first lap, knowing that he's perhaps got a couple more to come after this.
Alex is really keen on to get out on circuit, get on with business. Can't leave anything to chance now. It's now or never for the 73. Listen to him wind up through the... Oh, great shot, wasn't it? There was Alex chin on the tank. You can see as he braked and popped out the bubble as well there, as his neck muscles getting a real pounding as he squeezed the brake for that first corner. This time around he does negotiate that tricky turn 2.
The second off, Fabio Di Gianantonio was slightly more cautious through that first sector as he explored the conditions. He's the first rider on the road. Don't expect Jack Miller to be leaving much on the table in this final run. We've seen wetter conditions than this with Jack Miller on slick tyres, and he still rolled the dice.
Fast as he needs to be through sector 1 is Alex. Let's check his progress now in sector 2. Attack started in turn 7. He's already got caught out this morning. A few spots of rain there on our excellent lap this by Alex. This will be a Q2 lap at this late phase of the session. He drops that left leg, bit of chatter on the front end on that Ducati GP24 as he flung it left through turn 9. So 14th potentially to P5. Alex trying to 40-ish and book a place in Q2.
Brandon is finally getting up to speed. He's just a good first sector. Marini and Acosta also setting red sector times elsewhere on the lap. So Pecco Bagnaia, who's currently just starting a flying lap, is about to be dumped out of the top 10. Alex Marquez still in touch as he now makes his way onto the back straight. He's just got turn 15 to go.
One corner left then on this current lap for Alex Marquez. This will be some salvage job by Alex, having crashed on his first time attack. In that second corner, Pedro Acosta, another rider like Alex, who's been on the floor twice on day one, putting together a good late charge on the factory KTM. Over the line though, we'll track Alex up into P3, a 158.183 from Alex. Surely that has got him through into Q2. What about Acosta though now, as he powers down this long back straight? Well, Acosta, this is a heck of a lap by Acosta. An awesome lap by Acosta. He started this practice session on the floor with a crash through turn 9. He might be finishing with the fastest time of day one here in Sepang. Well, we track Acosta out of final corner. Yellow flags out in sector 3. Over the line, Acosta goes. Wow. It's the first 57 of day one here in Sepang. A 157.559. Forward, then he goes up in a second place on the Ducati GP24, but Pedro Acosta with an absolutely sensational lap here, goes top as well. Gusto Fernandez it was, that crashed at turn 9.
We've got Marini and Paul Espargaro also very fast. Bagnaia's on a personal best, but I'm not convinced he's going to move him too far up to the top 10 as he comes towards the line. Watch Marini, there's a big gap to spot into between Acosta and Morbidelli. Marini only goes into 7th place. Paul Espargaro goes into 3rd. It's KTM 1 and 3.
And the rider who's been fastest on our last 3 Fridays, Marco Bezzecchi on the factory Aprilia, at the moment out of Q2 directly. Bagnaia's just put in his best time of the session, a 158.348. It's close to top 10, but not close enough. And Zarco now and Alex look to find low 157s here. This is brilliant by Zarco. We saw how hard he was pushed at LCR Honda a couple of moments ago to find that 58.129. Zarco is running a big upset here. If he can put the LCR Honda into P1. Look once again how hard he is pushing that front tyre on the RC213V. Out of the final corner. A bit of move on the rear tyre there as he grabs a handful of throttle. Zarco to the finish line. Mia goes up briefly to second. 2 Hondas now inside the top 3, although that's just changed immediately as Jack Miller goes up into 3rd place. Alex Marquez up to P7.
I'm pretty sure with the time that's remaining that this is going to be Bagnaia's last lap of the session. There were less than 2 minutes remaining when he went across the line, but I don't think he's going to get to the line for one more. So this is all on this final lap for Pecco Bagnaia. Red sector times from Marini, from Quartararo, from Juan Mir, from Fermin Aldeguer too. Aldeguer from topping most of the day. He's now out of the top 10.
Bezzecchi needs a big lap. His back is up against the wall right now. Into the factory Aprilia rider who's been relegated down to a 14th place at 58.3. The best from Bez, which at the moment has got him over 8/10 of a second behind Acosta. Bagnaia then down through the high-speed left-hander of turn 12. A rapid rate of knots through there at about 200 kilometres an hour. But it's going to be pretty close. Bagnaia has got no margin for error, has he, at all in this final section? But look at that estimated P11 from the Italian. What about Alex Marquez?
Aldeguer doesn't make it.
Aldeguer is out as well. I mean, fastest FP1 this morning. Aldeguer.
Ben doesn't make it either. He's 14th, 58.3. So Marco Bezzecchi won't be going through. Neither will Fermin Aldeguer. Can Pecco Bagnaia dodge a bullet in this final lap of the session? The finish line is coming up. He needs to be in the 57th, really. Bagnaia doesn't make it.
Aldeguer and Bezzecchi did make it over the line, though, for one more lap in this session. They need it. Aldeguer 13th, Bezzecchi 14th. That wasn't their form, but was it at all coming into this Malaysian Grand Prix? Agura, well, his session is over. He's taking the checker flag. Agura won't be in the Q2. A whole bunch of red helmets, lights come back, commentary box screens here. Quartararo up to 5th. A 157.868, surely that's enough. 4 Japanese bikes right now in the top 5. Zarco 2nd, Miller 3rd, Mia 4th, Quartararo 5th.
Bezzecchi's not making it. He's a second down at the first sector. Alex Prins has gone down 2 at the end of the session, but Marco Bezzecchi will not be going through to qualifying 2. As we see Morbidelli going across line, Gian Antonio takes 6th, which puts Rins on the bubble. Are the yellow flags going to save the 42?
Rins crashing out after he just set the fastest first sector of the session. That looks like it was a painful one for Rins, so he's going to be, at the moment, well, he's in 10th place. Is he going to be able to salvage that Q2 spot? It's all eyes on Aldeguer, who's got over the line with about 10 seconds of this session remaining. What a dramatic finish this has been. We're getting sore next year, aren't we? The amount of time we spent looking skyward to see whether those dark clouds are going to throw out any more rain. Aldeguer then, well, I'll tell you what, he loses a whole chunk of time, doesn't he, in sector 3 with Aldeguer. That's where he's going to have to really polish his act overnight. Sector 3 clearly, Aldeguer struggling. Morbidelli 7th with a 58.041. We're going to track Aldeguer then, Mandalika Grand Prix winner, as he approaches the checker flag at the end of this session. Is he in Q2? Over the line he goes. No, he is not, and that's gone for Marco Bezzecchi. Wow, Bagnaia, Aldeguer and Bezzecchi, 3 riders who've been at times in tip-top form on our overseas sequence are in Q1.
Last weekend's winner Ralph Fernandez is also in Q1. He's 16th. Marini was bumped out in 11th place. He managed to find a 58.1, but that wasn't enough. KTM loving life today, aren't they? With Acosta quickest, Paul Espargaro also through in 8th place. Boys, it's been a day of extremes for Pedro Acosta. A crash in either section, but he ends it on top.
The last Friday MotoGP. Now that has happened seldom few times over the last few years or so. 57.559, absolutely brilliant by Acosta. Zarco, Miller, Mir and Quartararo also find 57s. No Ducati then producing a sub 158 lap here this afternoon in Sepang as Frankie Morbidelli lights up that rear tyre in the practice start zone. Morbidelli though is safely through to Q2 in 7th, and Paul Espargaro, Alex Martin 10 at the end of that practice session. Some Friday for Honda and Yamaha.
Well, that little shower that we had partway through the session kind of interrupted things for around 10 minutes, but pointedly set up a grandstand finish. That practice session, fascinating to speak to the riders to understand just what went on in those final 5 minutes. Were some prepared to take more risks than others? Did some bikes just work better than others in those final few minutes of the session? Because the field was turned on its head from the likes of Aldeguer and Bagnaia, who were up in the top 2 for most of the day. Both of them turfed out of the top 10 in the end, and it is a heavyweight qualifying run coming up with the last 3 Grand Prix winners all in it.
That was Prix inside the top 10. Agura there, best runner on day 1 here in 14th place. That was a great job. Some late lap that by Miller. No wonder he's got a big smile on his face. Straight to Q2 then. Pedro Acosta on the KTM. Johan Zarco on the Honda, Miller on the Yamaha, Mir on the Honda, Quartararo on the Yamaha, Fabio Di Giannantonio, the lead Ducati in 6th place. Just 3 Ducatis inside the top 10 at the end of day 1 here. Alex Marquez with a pretty good rescue. 2 KTMs as Miguel Oliveira had some late drama on the second of the Prix Pramac Yamahas. Do you know what? Pedro Acosta is some talent. He is some rider, isn't he? 2 crashes on day 1, but he ends it in P1. Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Akiayo.
As he rolls into pit lane now, Aki, is that an indicator of how competitive Pedro can be this weekend, or how big his balls are?
Let's see, it's a bit too early to say, but of course, impressive lap, and also, let's say that more happy about the pace what we found quite quickly. That the morning was a little bit for nothing, let's say, so everyone starts from the 0 in the afternoon, and it was impressive how quick Pedro finds the pace that he was doing quite constantly. Good lap time. So of course this best lap was, especially sector 4, was something really impressive. I'm happy for the work, and now it's time to focus to find the pace, of course, for race, and we need to still do quite well. Great job, brother. Thanks a lot.
Phenomenal job. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Akiayo. To Pedro Acosta. Said right at the start of this day 1 in Sepang, after he had first-time winners for Fermin Aldeguer and Ralph Fernandez now last 2 Grand Prix. It was over to Pedro Acosta to try and keep this incredible sequence going. But what a start it has been. 2 crashes early on here.
the money to the marshals there who gave us some help at turn 2 earlier in the day.
That's some lap. What a lap by Acosta. He was tight at the top. You have to give credit as well to Zarco on the LCR Honda machine. He wasn't even 200ths down. Whoa. Whatever you're doing tomorrow, wherever you're watching in the world, make sure you tune in to Q1 because it will feature Bagnaia, Aldeguer, Bezzecchi, Raul Fernandez. There was a bit of a late rally from Brad Binder, who spent the majority of that practice session marooned down in last place. Binder did claw his way back up into 17th for the 158.739. Somebody who is going to be breathing a almighty sigh of relief right now is Alex Rins, because that 158.117 got Alex into Q2, and that's a real heavy one. You could see Alex was wincing as he walked away from that crash, down the hill into turn 5, the left-hander, big old get off that. I mean, you're up to 190 kilometres an hour when you tip into that corner.
Flexing his muscles and showing us the scars on his right arm there was Alex Rins. All's well that ends well, I guess, but many tears from those who were caught up by the conditions today. This was Pecco Bagnaia. I believe this is when he completed the session, and once again demonstrating his frustration at recognising that he was outside the top 10. He's having a little look over to the left there. He's checking out the screen to see where he ends up the session, and he's not going to like the news that he sees.
Fine margins, the finest of margins. Bagnaia 12th. It sounds like a bit of a disaster, doesn't it? It is really not to be in Q1, but when you look at the lap times and reflect on how close he was, well, he wasn't even 900ths of a second away from a place inside that top 10. 3 Ducatis then inside the top 10. Here's Raul Fernandez. That was Raul Fernandez just moving through your picture before another Fernandez was taking some tarmac reluctantly here in Sepang. That's Augusto Fernandez just tipped off of the V4 powered YZR M1. 59.9 was the best from Augusto in that session. Bastianini, a former Sepang MotoGP winner, of course, when he was on top of the Ducati. Another great day once again in time attacks for the Beast. Down in 19th place for the 158.953. He was almost 1.4 seconds away. Top Ducati, just as he was in the Australian Grand Prix last weekend, is Fabio De Gianantonio. But as I mentioned, the last 2 Grand Prix here in Sepang, the top 6 place on the grid have been all Ducatis. Just one of them inside the top 6 this afternoon. As we get to see a fantastic Friday as far as the Japanese brands are concerned. 4 of the last 7 Grand Prix, Pecco Bagnaia has not been able to negotiate his way directly into Q2. Not happy reading as far as the Q3 is concerned, unfortunately, on day 1 here in Malaysia.
But Pedro Acosta, despite crashing twice today, does end as the fastest rider in a hugely dramatic close to practice. Acosta ahead of Johan Zarco. Jack Miller ensures Yamaha have 2 bikes in the top 5, with Fabio Quartararo just behind Juan Mir. Fabio Di Gianantonio first Ducati, VR46 6th and 7th with Morbidelli next up. Paul Espargaro once again straight to Q2 in 8th ahead of Alex Marquez, who's just snuck in 9th, and Alex Rins despite his late fall 10th. So a heavyweight Q1 involving Marini, Bagnaia, Aldeguer, Agura, Bezzecchi, Raul Fernandez as the winners of the last 3 Grand Prix all go into Q1. Binder rescues 17th but not enough for the top 10. Oliveira, Bastianini and Chantra next up ahead of Salvadori Pirro and Augusto Fernandez.
3 Yamahas inside the top 10, 2 Hondas inside the top 4. Pedro Acosta leading the way for the 157.559. Under 200ths of a second clear of Johan Zarco in 2nd place. Of course, no time set in run 1 because he was on the floor with a crash at turn 9. When he got down to business, well, he was very, very fast indeed, wasn't he? Having a good look at some more soft tyres, good race pace by Acosta, and then when he was out on fresh rubber, a new fresh rear tyre, 57.559 saves day 1 for Pedro.
Johan Zarco definitely brought the action. As you can see on run 3, he was one of the first to really go for it on a soft tyre when the rain was approaching. That 58.1 got him momentarily to the top 10, but he needed a 57 to book his place, and 57.5 did the trick.
Jack Miller on course potentially for back-to-back front rows in MotoGP for the first time on the Prima Pramac Yamaha. Miller doing a lot of work in the high 59s on worn soft rubber, and then he was on a fresh soft rear tyre. Saw off front at 57.840. Top 3 once again for Thriller Miller.
2 Yamahas in the top 5 and 2 Hondas, with Juan Mir ensuring that he ends both sessions today inside the top 4. He was also doing his work on soft rubber, putting around about half race distance on soft tyres at the start of the session, but he needed a 57.8 at the end of the session on a brand new soft rear tyre to take 4th place.
Check out our split times around this 5.5 from the Sepang circuit. Juan Mir by a thousandth of a second from his factory Honda teammate Luca Marini, just a whisker ahead of Acosta in 3rd.
Honda also top in the 2nd sector. Johan Zarco ahead of his compatriot Fabio Quartararo.
Morbidelli motoring on in sector 3, at half a tenth clear of Acosta and Zarco.
And Pedro Acosta destroying the final sector with nearly a 10th in hand over Mir and 2 tenths over the rest of the field.
Well, just as we hoped it would be, that was a rather spectacular start, wasn't it, to our 25th edition of the MotoGP battle here in Sepang. And this right, 2 crashes right at the start of this morning's FP1 and right at the start of that decisive practice this afternoon. Pedro Acosta picks himself up off the floor and sets the fastest time here as we kick off the Grand Prix of Malaysia. Join us for Sprint Saturday here tomorrow in Sepang.